Some things are bought for too little, and yet cost everything to carry. And sometimes, the smallest act of mercy plants roots deeper than blood. Before we begin this journey, take a breath. If you're someone who believes that healing can come from unlikely places, and that strangers can become family, then you're in the right place. Subscribe to True Soul Stories, because in a world full of noise, we tell the quiet truths that matter most. Please consider subscribing. Now, let's begin. The dust didn't move in Bell County, unless the wind decided to remember. Most days, the fields lay flat and stubborn. The grass cracked like burnt paper under the Texas sun. There was a stillness of the land, one that felt less peaceful and more like the silence of man holding his breath for too long. Waylon Hart was 62 the year the auction came through town. He'd lived alone since the day Marlene passed. Her rocking chair on the porch hadn't creaked in years, though he left it exactly where it was, cushions sagging, worn quilt folded like a memory. The ranch had shrunk with him. Barns too wide, bed too long, dinners too quiet. His hands still remembered the way to work, but his heart didn't push for much anymore. He moved through days like a man flipping through an old photo album, not quite looking, not quite letting go. The auction was set up in the church lot. Cattle mostly, some rusted tools, crates of apples bruised from the trip. Waylon wasn't planning to stop. He just wanted to pick up kerosene from Earl's Hardware before sunset. But something about the way the air changed made him look. Not noise, the opposite. The kind of silence that draws the eyes. There she was, a girl, maybe 16, maybe younger. She stood too still, like a deer in headlights with no plan to run. Her skin was too clean for farm work. Her blouse hung awkwardly on her frame, shoes too big, hands folded in front of her as if someone had told her not to speak, not to cry. The man beside her wore a cowboy hat and a grin that didn't reach his eyes. He slapped a clipboard against his leg, like he was keeping time with the bidding. Someone yelled a number. Another scoffed and waved him off. $3. $3 damn dollars. The crowd laughed, not mean but hollow. The way people laugh when they don't know what else to do. Waylon didn't laugh. He stepped forward without knowing why. The same way you step into the rain after too long indoors. He said nothing, just raised his hand. No one else countered. She didn't flinch when the clipboard man nodded and walked off like it was a done deal. Waylon didn't know what to do with her. Not then. He just walked back toward the truck, the girl following, her steps as quiet as snow falling at noon. The first 30 seconds of this video may have felt like a story about buying. But stay. This isn't about ownership. It's about something harder, learning to live again. If this story already tugs at your chest, subscribe, because the people who still feel, they're the ones who keep the world alive. He didn't ask her name for 3 days. He cooked enough for 2, then left her plate on the end of the table. He didn't watch to see if she ate. He fixed the back shed and oiled the hinges on the barn gate. He whistled to the goats out of habit, pretending that nothing had changed. But it had. There was a presence now. Quiet, sure, like a soft in a house too long empty. He heard her crying once. In the hayloft, just for a moment. He left cocoa on the step that night. Cinnamon, no sugar. The way Marlene used to make it. She drank it, every drop. Her name was Lynn. She was 15. Her accent was light, but her English was clear. Said she didn't know where her parents were. Said someone took her from her uncle in Houston. Said she didn't cry because it never helped before. Waylon listened, didn't press. That night, he sat on the porch for the first time in months. The stars didn't feel so far. She worked gently, fed the chickens, swept the porch. Not because he asked, because she wanted to earn her keep. He built her a small bed in the corner of the guest room, fixed the broken lamp, gave her Marlene's old quilt, the one with blue patches like sky windows. She held it like it was made of light. Weeks passed. They spoke in short sentences. She liked boiled eggs. He hated when the mailman slammed the gate. She drew tiny horses in the margins of old phone books. He carved wood in the shed just to keep his hands busy. Then came the letter from the state. Something about investigations, about minors and property transfers. about legal custody. It was written like he'd bought a thing, not taken a life. He stared at it for hours. Then at her. She was sitting in the sun, legs crossed, a baby goat curled in her lap, smiling. He hadn't seen a smile like that in years. He packed the truck, drove to the city, walked into the county office with his hat in his hands and his voice steady. "She's not property," he said. They gave him forms. He signed them all. They asked for proof of income. He brought in ledgers. They asked for references. The pastor, the postman, even Earl from the hardware wrote letters. It took 6 months, but in the end, he became her guardian. The ranch changed. Colors returned. Flowers she planted along the fence line, a red kettle on the stove, painted rocks near the well. So did laughter, sometimes hers, sometimes his. She called him Mr. Whalen. He never corrected her. He didn't call her daughter. But one night, after she fell asleep on the porch swing, he whispered it anyway. She never said if she heard. The day the ranch fire started was too hot for April. Lightning hit the far tree line. Flames moved fast. Whalen ran barefoot into the barn to cut the horses loose. He didn't see the beam fall. When he woke up, his chest burned, and the world was smoke. Lynn was beside him, soaked with ash and tears. She'd pulled him out. He'd taught her how to drive a tractor a month ago, just in case. She said, in case I'd come. He spent 6 weeks in the hospital. Said little. Slept often. Lynn came every day. Brought him cocoa. Read aloud from Marlene's Bible. Played soft music on a speaker she kept in her bag. When he got home, the ranch was still standing. Black scars in the far field. But the fences were painted, the porch scrubbed, the rocking chair oiled. She'd done it all, one night. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a deed. To the ranch, in her name. She stared at it for a long time, said nothing. Then she folded it in half, slid it into her bag, and made him cocoa. That spring, she planted wildflowers along the old cattle path. She started painting. Framed one of her drawings, a goat and a man sitting under a big oak tree. It hung over the fireplace. People in town started to know her name. Miss Lynn, they said. Smart girl. Strong. Keeps the place like a dream. Whalen smiled when they said it. Until one day, she didn't come back from town. Her bike was found near the river. The cocoa mug was still warm on the porch. The goats bleated at dusk, waiting. Whalen stood there, staring down the dirt road, heart pounding like thunder in a dry sky. And that, my friend, is where we pause, because the story isn't over. Sometimes the people we save turn around and save us, but not every savior arrives on time. The cocoa mug sat untouched on the porch, steam rising, sun falling, and Whalen's heart refused to believe what his eyes suspected. Lynn's bike leaned against a tree near the river. The grass around it wasn't flattened, just disturbed, like something quick, like someone pulled. The sheriff came when he called, searched the banks, sent divers into the shallow end. They found nothing. The town whispered, maybe she ran. Maybe someone took her back. Girls like that, they don't stay. Whalen didn't listen. He knew Lynn, knew how she folded her socks, how she cried at sad piano music, how she left daisies by the window every Sunday. She didn't run, and she never said goodbye without meaning it. He searched every mile of his land, walked into town, looked in alleyways, diners, bus stops, taped a photo to the bulletin board in Earl's Hardware. Weeks passed. The cocoa mug stayed on the porch until dust made it gray. He kept the gate open. He left the porch light on. He never said her name aloud in public, but every night he whispered it to the stars. Then, a month later, a letter arrived. No return address. Just his name in careful handwriting. Inside was a single sentence. I'm safe. Don't look for me. There was a drawing on the back. A goat and a sunflower. It was hers. His fingers trembled, but not from relief. The handwriting was shaky, the pen pressure uneven. The goat's proportions were wrong, as if someone had made her rush. He stared at the letter all night, then packed a bag. No one knew where he went, just at the gate closed for the first time in weeks. The porch light clicked off. The truck rolled out before sunrise. He started in Houston, drove through back roads and highways, visited shelters, paid cash at motels, talked to field workers, market vendors, gas station clerks. He showed her picture, said little. A few recognized her. Most didn't. One woman, outside a laundromat in Lubbock, pointed to the drawing, said she saw a girl hand something like that to a boy in a denim jacket, said the boy worked for a rancher near the state line. It was enough. Waylon drove 4 hours without stopping. The ranch near the border was wide, clean, and too quiet. It looked polished, like a photograph pretending to be a home. The man who answered the gate wore polished boots and cologne. He smiled like he'd practiced in mirrors. Waylon asked about workers, about girls. The man said he hired folks through an agency, didn't keep records. Said he had no idea what Waylon was talking about. Waylon noticed a necklace in the dust near the gate, a small wooden horse. Lynn's carving. He picked it up without asking, said thank you, turned around, drove to the sheriff's office in the next town, filed a report, made some calls, then waited. It took 3 more weeks. But justice, when it wants to, moves like wildfire. The rancher was arrested, not just for Lynn, but for a ring of others. Girls, boys, work with no wages, rooms with no locks. They found Lynn, tucked in a shed with one small window, eyes tired, cheeks sunken but alive. When she saw Waylon, she didn't cry. She just reached out, touched the front of his shirt, felt the old, familiar heartbeat underneath. Still stubborn, she whispered. He didn't answer, just held her, until the room grew too full of memory to breathe. They took her to a safe house, asked questions, ran tests. Waylon stayed in a motel nearby, visited each day, brought her cocoa with cinnamon, no sugar. She didn't speak much at first, not about what happened, just about things she missed. The goats, the porch swing, the creek behind the barn. He told her they were waiting. When she was cleared, he brought her home. The gate opened. The porch light glowed. The cocoa mug was washed and waiting. She stepped inside like someone waking up, touched the rocking chair, ran her fingers along the old locket above the mantel, sat in her favorite spot. Then she began to laugh, soft, uncertain, then louder. Waylon chuckled, too, until the house sounded full again. She didn't talk about it for a year. One morning, she simply said, "They wanted to buy me, too." He didn't ask for more, just handed her a mug. And she said, "But you didn't buy me, you gave me something instead." The ranch, she managed it now, hired help, bought better feed, fixed the irrigation, named all the goats. She framed the deed, hung it beside Marlene's photo, said, "Now the house has 3 hearts in it." Years passed. Lynn started painting full-time, opened a studio in town. Her art showed in local galleries, then regional ones. She painted the ranch, the goats, the sunflowers, the fire, the porch, and always Waylon, as an old man on a tractor, as a shadow by the creek, as a silhouette holding cocoa. She never left, until one fall evening, when the wind moved like it remembered something. Waylon didn't come down for dinner, didn't rock in the chair. She found him in his bed, peaceful, hands folded, a photo of Marlene in one hand, and her carved horse in the other. He'd left her everything. Again, the house, the land, the memory. The porch never stayed empty. Lynn kept it just as he left it, painted the railings, planted new daisies, served cocoa to every visitor who looked like they'd forgotten how to feel. She told his story, softly, with brushstrokes, with color, with silence, and always ended with this: "He gave me his ranch, but what he really gave me was a home." She built a school on the far end of the field for girls like her, who weren't bought, who were found. And every year on the first frost, she made cocoa with cinnamon, left a mug on the porch. For him, for herself, for every soul still learning that sometimes the smallest kindness becomes the biggest legacy. Some stories are about loss, but this was about return, about how love doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just shows up quietly every day. If this story moves something in you, share it. Because someone out there might still be waiting on a porch, still holding cocoa, still hoping to be found. Subscribe to True Soul Stories, because the world is full of pain, but it's also full of people who still care. Like Waylon, like Lynn, like you,